What's up, guys? Dylan Rush here with Cage Side Press, joined today by a sports personality most commonly known as the Schmo. But tonight, Dave Schmullinson. How you doing, Dave?
You have Dave right here in the flesh. Dylan, good to see you, man.
Meet Dave. So I do know a lot. I do know a good amount about you. I've met you at a couple events, had some conversations. But there's a lot I don't know about you, a lot I want to find out tonight. So that's the point of this interview. One thing I do know, you grew up in Buffalo Grove, Illinois.
Yep.
I've never heard of Buffalo Grove, Illinois before I met you. What is Buffalo Grove, Illinois like?
I think it sounds a lot more like farmish than it really is. I guess where I grew up was a farm. I grew up on this street called Old Farm Village, but it is a northwest suburb of Chicago, 25 miles north of the city. I'm actually close to Wisconsin too. 40,000 people in Buffalo Grove, Illinois. I went to a high school with 6,000 kids, so it's not really farmish. It's a pretty big suburbia area.
I went to school in New York City, and my high school had 400 kids total,
Wow.
100 in each class. So it goes to show. Were you always into sports growing up? Was it MMA or was it other sports too?
I was always other sports, always into sports. Like, I grew up on a cul-de-sac with kids my age who were always competitive. I played every sport. My passion was basketball growing up. I loved basketball. I played soccer at one point. That didn't last long. I played baseball at one point. I played football. I played lacrosse. Fighting's always been interesting to me. Like, with boxing, me and my friends, we would box each other in each other's basements or in high school, like in someone's garage and stuff like that. But those were really cool. And MMA still was a growing sport. It wasn't really big when I was growing up, so it wasn't really on my radar at that time.
Mm-hmm. You weren't a 10-year-old, 12-year-old thinking I'm going to be an MMA journalist?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So basketball, you must have practiced a lot because you really cooked DC and Bilal Muhammad in that game. What was that, 276 here in Vegas?
It was International Fight Week. Not this past one, but the one before. It was Jamal Hill was on my team. Bilal Muhammad was on my team. DC brought his own team. He was the enemy. We beat DC. I played in the first game, and then the second game, I didn't play, and Jamal Hill lost.
I heard you hit the winner, though.
I did hit the winner of the game.
Okay.
I did hit the winner of that game, but DC likes to cheat a little bit,
I've heard.
He likes
fouls here and there.
And some BS travel call, but basketball is my favorite sport growing up. I grew outside of Chicago. The 90s, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time. When people say GOAT, I think Michael Jordan.
And now you're interviewing athletes. I don't know how long you have been doing so, but Devin Booker you had an interview with. I know Bill Walton you had an interview with. I know Pat Mahomes is football, but Pat Mahomes, are you enjoying getting into these other sports, and is that something you're looking to do more so in the future, get into this football and basketball?
It's funny. I actually started getting into, with the Schmo character, was NBA and the NFL
really?
Was other sports. So the other sports came before MMA, and actually what's going on right now is I am branching back into other sports too. I'm going back into football and doing some of the other sports, but I never built the Schmo to be just this MMA personality, MMA journalist, but combat sports and fight sports seem to stick a lot. I love them. They're my bread and butter. It's my base, but the Schmo's a sports personality. I don't discriminate against any sport.
Mm-hmm. Not even lacrosse games at Mandalay Bay.
Yeah, not even lacrosse games at Mandalay Bay.
So you went to school for sports management?
I went to school, I guess, for sports management. It wasn't even a major. It was a minor.
Really?
A minor.
Yeah.
I studied communications.
I
went to school to study girls and to have a good time.
And you went
would know about that, right? You went to
ASU,
ASU, I went to U of A.
Current student, last semester.
Oh, wow, yeah.
U of A.
Best 4 years of my life.
U of A, this guy. You and freaking, what's his name? Muhammad Usman. I need Ryan Bader here and CV Dollar to be my bodyguards.
Ryan Bader.
Did you always, so you went in for communications, but growing up, did your parents have any role in journalism or in the media? Was it ever an idea when you were a teenager?
My parents are not even big sports fans.
Really?
My mom sold contact lenses, and my dad's a dentist. My dad loved the Bears and Bears football and stuff. We always watched Bears football every Sunday, but when it came to journalism and sports, not their forte. They always were very supportive of everything I did.
That's great.
Had to work hard for everything I got, but they just encouraged me to find my passion and do what makes me happy and make money.
Mm-hmm. So now you're a one-man publication. Fast forward to 2022. Maybe you have a couple guys with you, but you're the Schmo. You're a one-man publication.
I don't say much about it, but yeah, it's literally me and Helen, I guess. We take the roles of what some of these bigger publications have 10 or 12 people doing jobs for.
Did you ever expect, coming out of U of A or when you started with the Schmo character, to reach this level of stardom?
100%. But I never thought I'd be a Schmo. I I always had the passion to be the number one sports personality in the world. Do I think I'm that right now? No, but I'm working my ass off to get there. Am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, cool. Just making sure. I grind. Like, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. I wanted to be behind the desk at ESPN and talking sports and just doing that for a living. Nobody gave David Schmolenson a chance, so the Schmo was created to initially make a mockery of the system. It took a life of its own, and it became my shtick. It became my thing. I thought athletes got the same type of questions, the same generic answers they were getting. You really weren't getting people to showcase their personalities, and I created the character to really bring the best out of the athletes. I didn't think it would take on a life of its own, and now it's like I'm blessed to be the Schmo.
Did you know in that moment or going to sleep that night when Dana said, sorry, Schmo, what were you even advocating for? Was it a 165-pound division tournament?
So the backstory behind that is I pay my way for everything, right? So that was literally the last amount of money I'd saved up for that trip. It was the UFC press conference. They had seasonal press conferences back then. This was pre-COVID. UFC 236. It was April in Atlanta.
First UFC or no?
No.
No.
It was. I had actually been covering it for the year, about 10 to 11 months prior to. My first credentialed UFC event was UFC 227, which was Dillashaw Garbrandt 2. It's when Henry Cejudo beat Demetrius Johnson for DJ Henry 2 as well in LA. But that event, 236, Izzy won the interim title against Kelvin Gastelum. Holloway faced Poirier. Wow,
what an event! Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even. What is this? 236?
236.
I need to go back and watch that event. Wow, that is stacked.
It was great. But the Friday before they had the seasonal press conference, I had planned this question, Schmo ready and everything like that, about making a 165-pound weight division. If you think about it, especially at that time in 2019, the bulk of the best fighters fight at 155 and 170, and there's this 15-pound gap. And a lot of the guys are there, and there's people like Kevin Lee and Ben Askren on stage that would love to partake in a 165-pound weight division. I'd spoken to them months leading up to. I kind of planned this in my mind, and Dana had no idea who I was to that point. I'd been covering these events, and I do my schmo shtick, and I interview the athletes, but I had never asked a question at a press conference. It was only for my platform, where I would interview the athletes, and then the hardcore schmo fans would watch it.
Yeah.
Then everybody got to see it, and I already had the momentum, or should I say schmomentum. My foot was on the gas pedal, really pedaling out, going for, and I floored it. But I knew it was going to be one or two things prior to it happening. I was either going to be absolutely historic, and it was going to be a heroic type event, or they're going to boo me out, kick me out. Is it going to be my last one ever? Nothing in between. Didn't know where it was going to go. Yep. So I bet on myself, like I always have, and good things happen.
Wow, that's amazing. That is a story and a half right there. I read somewhere that you based the character off Craig Sager, a mix of Craig Sager and Rodney Dangerfield?
Absolutely. Sports first, comedy second. There's other people in the mix too. Being from Chicago, I look up to the Chicago Second City comedic legends, the John Belushis, the Chris Farleys. A lot of good
Chris Farley.
Body Matters, Fat Man, and a little... So I watch all of them. I see how passionate they are. And but I just figured if I can kind of lower it down to two people. Craig Sager always had the great jackets and stuff like that. And Rodney Dangerfield, I've always been able to relate to him because throughout his life, he never got the respect. I ain't got no respect. And he didn't have a larger break in his life till later on in life. And I'd been grinding. And still relatively young to the age of Rodney Dangerfield before he probably got his big success. But in journalism and sports media, it's a little different.
Of course. I know you've probably, I don't know, but I assume you've gotten this comparison before. I don't know how you feel about it. But when I first learned of the Schmo and started following you, I immediately thought Nardwuar.
It's funny because I have a college friend, U of A fraternity buddy, in 2017 or 18, he's like, yo, do you know this guy Nardwuar? And I had no idea. He told me to look him up and everything. And I see it. He interviews musicians and everything like that. I'm part Canadian. I know he's Canadian too. But I had absolutely no idea who he is. And then to the layman, they look at me and they see him. It's like a guy who's acting goofy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's his real voice or not.
No idea.
But clearly this is my real voice and it's not the schmo voice.
Yeah.
But I had absolutely no idea who he was. And I think it's kind of a lazy approach to think I'm Nardwuar. but I can understand the comparisons. But if you really dive into his work and my work,
It's completely different.
you know it's completely different.
Definitely.
I don't have gifts for all my people at the end, or
And the
doesn't he
pose
do
at
like do. No, but I think what he picked up on him, which is what I get from my comedians, is the facial expressions.
Yeah.
And you have to have your own unique facial
You already go
expressions.
to that.
I haven't studied his facial expressions, but I know he has facial expressions.
He does.
Are they the same as the Schmoes?
They're not the same as the Schmoes.
But we're just goofy guys.
Yeah, definitely. Backtrack a little bit. What were you doing before the Schmo character? You didn't have the Schmo character in college, am I correct?
No.
So you were doing, but you told me, I forget what it was, but Bellator 288 in Chicago last November, you told me you were doing some type of reporting, podcasting. Was it football?
No, I was working for USA Today Sports. I was a publisher account manager. I'd been promoted at that time to the senior publisher account manager, but my role is to consult sports websites. And I took that job in my mid-20s. I had no business getting it because I knew that the newspaper was going digital. And I was stoked to be a part of a brand like USA Today Sports. And immediately I made friends with the journalists and started volunteering on my weekends around my day job to consult sports websites, to start covering the Nike Elite 11 football camps, college basketball previews for the print tabloid edition, whatever I can to be a journalist. And also the sites I was consulting, they needed video content. Video is the highest way to monetize on a sports website. So I managed verticals like college football, college basketball, for example, fantasy sports. So I started as representing USA Today and Dave Schmolenson, creating video content. For one example is Kentucky Nation or TigerNet.com. TigerNet.com was a Clemson football dedicated site. Blanking the name of the Kentucky basketball site, but that's one of them that I worked with directly, and I would create content for them, updates, top 5 things or weekly updates, just getting my reps on camera.
Of course.
But it was at USA Today where I created the Schmo.
So I asked you already, did you expect this level of stardom? Did you always expect, or maybe did you always want to be independent? Did you always want to be a one-man publication like you are today?
No idea. Like, the world's changing. The internet is still, in my opinion, in the infancy days. It's the wild, wild west. I had no idea what things were going to look like. I always knew that I would be successful. I've always dreamt of it. I've always worked hard. I had the passion. I know I had the skills, and I know I'll do whatever it takes. I had no idea it would become this, and I still feel like I'm nowhere near the tapping into my potential. I have some big things coming up in 2023 that people are going to see unfolding, some big partnerships, and I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff, and I'm really excited for it. But no, I mean, I never thought I would necessarily start my own media company. I felt like my hand was forced. Nobody gave me a chance, and if no one's going to do it for you, you got to do it for yourself. And if no one's going to believe in you, you got to believe in yourself. And no one should believe in you if you don't believe in yourself.
100%. As I mentioned previously, I had the pleasure of sitting next to you at Bellator 288 in Chicago this past November. Rafion Stotts is sitting next to us. Bilal Muhammad's right in front of us. But all the fans from the sections are pouring down, making their way to take a photo with the Schmo. This is not a joke. This is not an exaggeration. There were multiple times I had to exit my seat, go to the newsroom, get out of there because I was getting swarmed. I was in the midst of it. I asked you this then. We didn't talk about it too much. Does it ever get old to you?
Absolutely not, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We all put our pants on one leg at a time.
Yep.
I know where I came from. I never got into this to take photos with people, to be some celebrity or anything like that. I just want to wake up every day, talk sports, entertain, make money. Like, that's literally been my MO since day one. And if you refuse to take a photo with one person or you're bad with one person, it's going to reflect you for everybody. And I was always that kid going to a baseball game, trying to catch a foul ball and trying to meet my favorite athlete for an autograph. And I know how much it meant to me if they give just 5 to 10 seconds out of the day to smile, to touch my hand or whatnot. If I have the ability as a regular schmo to do that for somebody, doesn't matter what mood I'm in, I will make the time for that. And that will never get old. I greatly appreciate it. It could get overwhelming at times, but it's much better than the alternative of nobody caring or giving a hell of who you are.
So you've always had this focus. You've always wanted to be different. You felt like the fighters and athletes in general were asked the same questions. You coined a phrase, sports comedy. how do you use sports comedy to help humanize these athletes in your interviews?
So I'm glad you asked that question. I saw that vertical because I was back in my days of consulting sports websites at USA Today. You know, there's all these different verticals. There's fantasy football, there's golf, there's tennis or whatnot. There's humor, there's fashion, but there's no sports comedy. And I have a passion for comedy. I have a passion for sports.
Makes sense.
And sports, that all falls under this umbrella of entertainment. So if you can't make fun of yourself, like, I think making fun of yourself is one of the best traits someone can do. And part of the schmo is being self-deprecating.
Mm-hmm.
The joke is always on the schmo and never the athlete.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I felt like in sports media, the traditional talk show sports, is when people start loosely throwing out the phrase, oh, this person's a bum, this person's no good, they suck. Who are you to say that if you've never competed or played at that level, at the professional level? Like, everyone can be an opinionist, but not everyone can be an analyst. I think there's a fine line there, and I always have this conversation with high-level athletes. When people start ridiculing them and saying they're no good, they suck or whatever, who's throwing stones at them?
Yeah.
It's people that have never competed. They're eating potato chips and Cheetos in their mom's basement.
Yep.
So being self-deprecating, using sports and comedy, as you can tell, I'm very passionate for sports. I ask great questions, but I use my comedy and I use the character to break down the wall so I can get them to answer the questions at hand, but also sprinkle in some fun and showcase their personality at the same time.
Definitely. You have a great relationship with a lot of these fighters, but specifically since I'm in Arizona and I see it on Instagram all the time, Henry Cejudo. It seems like you guys have a great working relationship.
What about Sean O'Malley?
Sean O'Malley, you've done so much stuff with recently.
And they might be fighting.
Yeah.
They might be fighting.
I didn't even think of that.
Oh my God. They both have beautiful daughters that are around the same age. They live about 25 minutes away from each other. In fact, the last time I was in Arizona, I went to Sean O'Malley's house in the morning, then I went to Henry's in the afternoon. I actually drove from Sean's house to Henry's house. I love them both. I hope they both make a shit ton of money, make a bag. I'm not going to pick favorites because I don't have a favorite. I just hope they don't get brain damage from each other, and I hope they make a shit ton of money.
That brings up this question. I know you kind of just answered it, but like, what do you do when two people that you have such a good relationship with fight? You watch it?
At the end of it, of course I do, man. I don't get emotionally invested into the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because we're all human, and I understand what they're trying to do here. They're trying to provide for their family. They're competitive. They're trying to be the best at their craft. I understand what it's like. I'm very competitive. I know you're very competitive. You have to be very competitive because you dragged me into your room over here. Our backdrop is falling away over here. So I'm not tied down to the outcome. I'm tied down to their success, if that makes sense.
Okay, I like that. So we keep calling you, we as in me, I keep calling you a one-man publication, but in recent years, it's become, as you mentioned, kind of a two-person type deal.
Yeah.
How has it been? I'm not going to ask you anything too personal, but having someone like Hell in your life, how has that influenced your career?
It's so crazy because you know the phrase, you never shit where you eat?
Yeah.
I never in a million years would I ever imagine until I met Helen that I would be with somebody for the rest of my life that it works in the same field as me. We literally met here in Vegas, Manny Pacquiao, Adrian Broner. I would see her at Bellator. I'd see her at UFC. She fucking hustles. I have not met somebody who has that type of work ethic as I do. And she was hustling, paying time at the radio station, at times living out of her car to make ends meet, to make this dream come to reality. We relate in so many different levels. Our personalities gel so well. We work so damn well with each other. Like, I encouraged her when she had a radio show here in Vegas that was affiliated with the NBC at the Lotus Network. Hey, you'll make more money doing it on your own. She took the risk, she left, and she started her own shtick, her own company, you know, Helen U Sports. Bam! Which she had affiliated with the radio station, but she's completely independent, completely doing it on her own, and we film for each other. You know, we help each other. She's got great relationships with athletes. I have great relationships with athletes. You know, together as a two-man team, like, we're able to conquer the world. And prior to meeting her, I'm doing it by myself. And, you know, here and there, I have some friends that work in other projects that can help me shoot some stuff. And, you know, I had to teach myself how to edit throughout the journey. For her, she had to film and shoot and edit all of her stuff by herself. So, I mean, it was a blessing in disguise that I found someone literally doing what I love, and I never thought that would happen.
I'm not a jealous guy, but I'm so jealous of you just based on everything you just said. Imagine I just had a girl that would come with me, do all these things, had the work ethic, the passion for it.
And the understanding, too.
Understanding
Late hours.
everything, the hours and everything.
Dude, like, there was this one time, like, we just got in the car and drove all the way to Albuquerque. Like, freaking 9 hours.
Jackson
Get
Wing?
you a girl to take you to Jackson Wing.
Yeah, that's...
Absolutely.
So jealous. That's crazy. All right, I just got the last 3 questions for you real quick. What is a piece that you personally were very proud of? Not something that got a lot of likes or engagement or something that was successful, but it's something that you did that you were like, I'm proud of this.
Absolutely. I have not been able to dive as much into this as I want to, and I feel like 2023, the Jordan year, I'm going to do more of it. But it's the schmo versus the pro. It's when I get
Versus
in
the
there and I compete against the athletes, and I've done these. I've done a few of these. I've done one against Kevin Lee. I've done one against RDA. One I'm extremely proud of was, and it was funny too, was actually the top-ranked gym here in Las Vegas in 2019 against Kubrat Pulev. At the time, he was contending for the heavyweight boxing championship of the world. He goes in there, he throws some wild swings. I take a lot of body shots, and I'm willing to take the pain for the content. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've taken some heavy lead kicks from TJ Dillashaw,
No
and
way.
he's ragdolled me plenty of times. Henry's even ragdolled me a little bit here and there, but I think with the character, it's comedic, and the schmo versus the pro is something I'm super proud of, and I need to do a better job of building that, and I think that's something I'm trying to do here in
I
2023.
look forward to seeing more of that in the coming months. What advice would you have for an aspiring MMA journalist such as myself? Doesn't have to be me, but aspiring MMA journalist looking to get into this line of work.
What's so crazy is like the answer was so different 10 years ago as it was to 5 years ago as it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
The world is changing so much. Like TikTok was not a thing like 4 or 5 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Now it's a huge emerging platform, and social media is exactly what you need to be on to get your message across. And I think all these old traditional ways, when I was your age, when I was at the Better Arizona School, no offense, I was hustling, but I had thought you got to get affiliated with one of these major networks, and you can't do this stuff on your own. BS now. You can find a way to be different, and I think being different in 2023 is more prominent than ever. You got to find your way to stand out and to create content. Content is king. I know it's a cliche statement, but if you create consistent good content, you will come out on top. And maybe it won't get the views it deserves through a long, long time, but at the end of the day, the payoff will come. Mine came off in April 2019. People don't know how many years. That was a journey from when I graduated college from May of 2012 to get to April 2019. That was 7 years of sweat equity where no one knew who I was, when I put in all these extra hours, when there was times I was working at least 2 jobs, and I would put in 16 to 18 hours a day minimum. I had to do it because I understood, make the sacrifices now, it will pay off when I get to where I want to be. And I think a lot of people, younger people, aren't willing to pay the price. I say pay the piper. You have to be willing to pay the piper.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to sit through the muck and endure. Some days are going to suck, some days are going to be great. But if you're passionate for what you do and you have the work ethic and you find what that unique flavor is, you're going to get success.
As you well know, I'm a big fan of the Schmo, but I'm starting to like this Dave guy a little bit more than the Schmo. I'm a Dave fan now.
Man, some people behind the scenes, some powerful people that I interview say the same thing. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Shit.
I finish every interview with this question. Curious to hear what you have to say when it's all said and done. Schmo versus the Schmo. Schmo versus the pro. Schmo and the pro. These basketball games, DC, whatever it may be. What do you want people to remember most about Dave Schmolenson, the Schmo?
Somebody who is a good-hearted person, who is always willing to put in the work, who always was in it for the betterment of the parts. Some better than just an individual, not just for the individual, but the sum of the whole parts. It's for the entire world. I would love to leave the world a better place than what I inherited. If I could put a smile on somebody's face, if I can make their day in any way, shape, or form, that's what I want to be remembered as. Someone who made this world as a better place.
It's a great answer, man. I appreciate you taking the time. Don't rush.